Stephen, before I get into the video today, I'm going to first talk about the content and topics of our video thus far and videos in the future, because I think that the video I'm making today makes it necessary for me to bring this up. What I've been doing personally is thinking back to when we were living in traditions together and think about whether or not these topics would come up in casual conversation. The reason I bring all this up today is because I'm talking about something related to television, and that causes alarms to go off in my head for two reasons. One, you are not much of a TV person at all, and there's a very significant chance that if I talk about something related to TV, you will not find it interesting in the slightest. And two, because back when we were writing together for our blog Life Acoustics, a majority of my half of the content was just me doing weekly summaries of TV shows, and I don't want my content on this channel to turn into me doing that again. And I tell you all these reservations, but obviously I decided to make the video anyway because I decided that today I'm not making just a video about television. What I'm going to talk about today is how an atrocious event has occurred. Now, Stephen, I know how you feel about television shows and how you feel it's silly that people get into television shows the extent to which they do, but silly or not, you cannot deny that popular shows like How I Met Your Mother have large, passionate fan bases that follow these shows. And these fans give the show a reason to exist, which is why it amazes me when the writers can act in complete disregard to how the fans so clearly want a show to end. Of course, the writers and creators of a television show have every right and the ability to end a show however they see fit, and truth be told, it's nearly impossible to end a TV show forever without upsetting at least a faction of its fan base. However, that's not what happened with How I Met Your Mother. No, the finale did not end the show in a way that was just displeasing or unsatisfying. It made me question why I ever watched the show in the first place. Stephen, I'm pretty sure you have not watched the show, at least not officially watched it in the sense that you have seen every single episode of it in chronological order. And you probably don't have a huge interest in doing that, which is why I'm not worried about spoiling anything for you. Now don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch the finale, and I'm not going to give you an episode-by-episode synopsis, but what I am going to do is give you just enough information that you get the essence of who these characters are so that you know what you should feel going into this episode. Let's get into just the basics. The show opens in the future where Ted Mosby is narrating to his children the long-winded tale of how he got to the point in his life where he met their mother. Essentially, the show is entirely made up of flashbacks, and in these flashbacks, Ted is a single architect living in New York City desperately trying to find love. And the recurrent theme in this show is that Ted wants to find that happily ever after perfect romance, but through breakup after breakup must repeatedly come to terms with the fact that this is just a fairy tale. And the show kicks this theme off with Ted meeting and, of course, instantly falling in love with Robin Scherbatsky, who is another main character on the show. Through this romance, which quickly moves from infatuation to love to desperation and then eventually to destruction, we see in full the character of Ted Mosby. We see, oh, this is the kind of guy who is not afraid to fall in love, put his heart out there, but eventually is going to receive it back in pieces. And then after Robin, the show goes through just a long string of women. Victoria, who was a wedding caterer, actually did last for a while, but then she ended up breaking Ted's heart because she decided to move to Germany for a cooking fellowship over him. She then returns later in the series where she dumps her fiancé for Ted, but then subsequently breaks up with him again because she realizes Ted is still in love with Robin. Stella was the next serious relationship he had after that, and it actually went all the way to the wedding, but of course she ends up leaving him at the altar for her ex, and this scars Ted for a while, but obviously not for long. Cindy was significant because at the time she was dating Ted, she was also rooming with the mother, and at one point while they're dating, Ted looks around Cindy's room and points out all the objects that indicate to him that she is the perfect woman for him, and then she admits that those objects aren't hers, but actually her roommate's, and this is the first hint we get that the woman that Ted is going to end up with at the end of the series is going to be the perfect woman for him, which gives us hope. Zoe was a relationship of Ted's that started out as rivalry, then changed to friendship, then went to romance, and then eventually led to a breakup because they never resolved the initial rivalry through which they met. And what's remarkable is that Ted's character was able to be maintained through 9 seasons of this show without the audience growing frustrated with his obviously hopeless love life. Now, that could be attributed partially to the talented writers of the show, but that's mostly due to the fact that there is an inevitable way for this show to end. No matter what happens in the show, or no matter how heartbroken Ted becomes, you know that he's going to find happiness in the end when he finally meets his future wife. And the audience actually meets the mother before the finale, and when you first see her, you don't really know how to feel because it's weird to put a face to this woman that you've been waiting to see for 8 seasons. But this is another instance where we see the brilliance of the writers of the show because they knew they needed to introduce you to the mother prior to the finale to give you time to fall in love with the mother. And the final season of the show, aside from other things, is spent showing the mother meeting individually all the other characters in the show, and through these interactions, you become excited that the finale is coming and that this is the woman, this is the character with whom Ted is going to spend the rest of his life. But that joy is short-lived, and this is where we get into why I was frustrated and upset by the season finale. Ted meets the mother in the finale, and it is a beautiful thing. Then he starts to very clearly be wrapping up the narration, and he's talking about how he loved their mother. Then you see the mother in a hospital bed, and he says something along the lines of, I loved her, or I knew this lesson even when she got sick. And I mean, you don't believe it at first, and you don't want to believe it. Even as they're showing you in the hospital bed, they don't actually say the mother died. They don't show him at a funeral. They don't say it explicitly, so you think maybe I'm misinterpreting what they're doing here. But no, that's exactly what's happening. They killed off the mother at the end of the show. The mother dying in itself is not extremely upsetting. I mean, that would make you sad, but if they had done it correctly, if this is what they wanted to do all along, I could have come to terms with that and moved on. The reason it's upsetting is because of what happens next. Ted ends the story to his kids with the line, "And that's how I met your mother." Ted moves on to the next topic, which is dating Robin. His kids point out that they realize that the entire point of him telling the story is not to tell them how he met their mother, it's to make them okay with his next decision, which is going to be asking them if it's okay if he dates Aunt Robin, if he moves on from the death of their mother. This is why it baffles me. The entire final season is spent building up the mother into this ideal match for Ted. And up to the final season, Robin as a character has always been tolerable. I've never been that big of a fan of her. I mean, she has her moments, but I personally felt like they weren't going out of their way to make sure you love Robin throughout the show. It's made even worse in the final season, which I don't even know if this was deliberate, but all of the negative qualities you've come to see in Robin over the years are all of a sudden magnified to the point where you don't like her character. So this is what I can't fathom. Why would you take a character that you were supposed to love, kill her off, and put the main character who you're rooting for with the character that you are not supposed to love? I mean, not all shows are supposed to give you warm, fuzzy feelings when you finish watching them, but it just makes no sense. Because the entire point of the show is Ted manipulating his kids into being okay with him moving on from their mother and dating Robin, who you don't like! I liked the show for a very long time, but that ending makes me have very negative memories of this show. I know, by now you're saying that I'm way too into this, I'm way too obsessed, and why do I care so much, and you don't care, and you're bored with this video. But I had to get that out, and I had to let you know what I was feeling. It's important. I guess in my next video I'll need to talk about something with actual substance. Yep, I can do that.